Hi biology students, I'm going to show you how to take your data from your enzyme inquiry lab and put it into a graph. For the evidence section of your claim evidence reasoning, you will need both a graph and a data table to earn all the points in the section. You currently have a data table, now we're going to make a graph. You need to go to chartgo.com. The link is in your document in Google Classroom, or you can just type it in. And for all of us in this class, we're going to make a bar chart for this lab. No matter what your independent variable was, a bar chart will work. So once you are at chartgo.com, go ahead and click bar chart, and this screen will come up. Here's where we're going to input our data. This is a great website to use not only for this assignment, but in any class where you have to make a graph. I'm going to scroll down to this chart settings. Most of this area we do not have to change. There are a few things though we have to do. We can leave the width, the height, all of that, the background color. We will leave those, but we do have to give our graph a title and our X and our Y axes titles. So I have some data from an experiment that I did. In my experiment, I changed the temperature of the potato mixture and I measured the amount of foam as my dependent variable. So here's my data. I'm going to need my data to build my graph. So make sure you have your document handy with your filled in data table. I'm going to go back to ChartGo, and I need to give my graph a title. The title should reflect what your independent variable was. So for mine, I'm going to say the effect of temperature on enzyme reactions. You could have the effect of the amount of hydrogen peroxide on enzyme reactions, the effect of the amount of potato mixture, the effect of shaking on enzyme reactions. Whatever your independent variable is should go in the title. Next, I need to put in my X title. So the X-axis of my graph, I need to have what the X-axis is about. X-axis is always your independent variable. So for mine, this is the temperature of the potato mixture. Many of you will have that same independent variable, or you could have the amount of shaking of the test tube. You could have the amount of hydrogen peroxide. You could have the concentration of potato mixture. Whatever your X is should be your independent variable. And then that takes me to the Y. The Y-axis on our graph is our dependent variable. Our dependent variable is what we measured. So my Y title for me is the amount of foam created, because that's what I measured. And if I measured, then I need units. So I measured mine in milliliters. Most of your Y title axes will be the amount of foam created. Some of you will have the rate of disk rise, or the amount of time that the disk rose, and then make sure you have the units. Seconds is probably what it's going to be. The rest of this top we can leave except for one thing. We are going to make sure that we click legend. Legend is like a key. So if we're going to have data in this graph and we have more than one trial, we're going to have to click legend or we won't know what goes with what. At this point, please pause this screencast and go back and write in your title for your graph, your X-axis, which is your independent variable, and your Y-axis, your dependent variable, and make sure you check legend. Go ahead, please. Once you have the chart settings filled in, then you're ready to add your data. So go ahead and scroll down. We can skip all these bar-specific settings. The default is just fine for that. And you'll get to this chart data right here. When you go to chart data, they'll have some X data filled in for you. Please delete it. And some Y, I believe. Please delete it, because that's where you're going to put your own data. They give you some sample data, but you don't need that. The first thing I have to do is add how many different variables I used. So for example, in my experiment, I used frozen potato water, room temperature potato water, and boiled. So I'm going to have 3 sets of data on my graph. So where it says Y data here, there's a green arrow. I need to add 2 more sets of data for a total of 3. And I'm going to fill in my groups right away so I know what they are. My first group of data will be frozen. My second group will be room temperature. And my third will be boiled. So let's think about this for a moment. If you did an experiment like mine, you'll have 3 Y data, 3 different independent variables I changed. If you did, for example, the amount of hydrogen peroxide, you may have done 3 different amounts, like 5 mils, 10 mils, 15, or you may have just done 2, 5 mils or 10. So in that case, you'd only need 2 sets of Y data. If you did change the shaking, for example, you may only have 2 sets of data. You may have not shaken and shaken. Please go right now and in chart data, click the green so you have the right amount of Y data, and then name the groups right away so we don't forget to do that. Go ahead and do that now, please. You can pause the screencast to get that done. Once you have your Y data in with the groups named, then we have to go over here to X. On my data, I had 3 trials. So that's what I'm going to put over in here. For trial, I'm going to put in the trials for my X data because that's what will go along my X axis. So I have trial 1, trial 2, and trial 3. If you just had 2 trials, you go trial 1 and 2 here. If you had 4 trials, you go up to 4. I think you understand that. And then here's in this box under Y data where I add the data from my actual experiment. So my first group is frozen. So I go back to my data table, and here are the 3 trials and my 3 different amounts of milliliters for my frozen. I can actually just copy it and paste it right there. So let me double check. I had 2, 3, 2. Yep, and that's what my data is, 2 mils, 3 mils, and 2. Remember, I don't have to write milliliters here because my axes, I already, up here, put in the unit. So I just need the numbers. Then my Y data for my room temperature, I go back to my data table. Here's my room temperature, so I'm going to copy this one, paste it here. And then my last set of data is for my frozen, or I'm sorry, my boiled potato mixture. So there goes my boiled. All right, I want to double check that I have everything I need. I have 3 trials. I have all 3 sets of data that line up here for my frozen, for my room temperature, and my boiled. That is really all I need to do. And then I clicked Create Bar Graph. Go ahead and pause the screencast right now to add all of your chart data, the X data, the Y data. Once you have all of your data in, you just click Create Chart. And here's your graph. I want to check to see that I like everything. It has my title, effective temperature, an enzyme reaction. It has my amount of foam with my units. And then here's my legend. The red is frozen for each one of the trials. The green is room temperature for each trial. And the blue is boiled. Looks good. If for some reason there's something that you do not like about your graph, you go back to Modify Chart and you can revise it. So pause the screencast right now and go ahead and create your chart. Double check that you like your chart. Once you have your graph, then we need to save it, because at this point, if you leave this website or even if you stay inactive for too long on it, the graph will disappear and so will all of your data. So if you scroll down, the next thing we're going to do is download the image. What it will do is it will save your graph in your downloads. once it's downloaded, I go into my document where I've been working all along in Google Classroom. I go to Insert. I'm going to insert an image. And I choose an image to upload. Make sure I'm in my downloads. And it will be the top one, the most recent that you did. I'm going to open it. And it will insert my graph right into my document. At this point, if I need to, I can change the size, I can move it, but I don't have to worry about losing it anymore because I have the graph. So now, for my evidence section of my CER, I have a data table and a graph. You can close, chart go, and continue to work now on your claim.